Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, April 12th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. Turning to the weather in Riverside, it looks like a comfortable day ahead, with a high reaching near 75 degrees Fahrenheit before dropping to a low of about 58 degrees overnight. Coming up on today's show, we'll take a closer look at the surprising factors contributing to the recent and unusual sell-off happening in the U.S. bond market and what it might mean for investors. We will also investigate the concerning trend of surging measles cases across the United States, examining the key reasons behind this public health challenge. We'll break down these important stories and more right after this on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We're starting this morning with some unsettling tremors in the financial world, specifically where things are usually the calmest, the U.S. bond market. What is normally seen as a quote, safe haven is seeing a rather freak sell-off, raising some serious questions. Here to help us make sense of it all is our financial reporter, Ethan. Ethan, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, Grace.
So U.S. Treasury bonds, people usually flock to these when things get rocky. What exactly is happening that is causing this concern?
That's right, Grace. Treasuries are typically where investors park their money when they're nervous about the economy or stock market volatility. But we've seen something quite unusual. According to data sourced via bar chart and Perplexity API, the yield on the key 10-year Treasury bond jumped dramatically around April 11th, surging from about 4.01% to nearly 4.6% before settling around 4.5%. Now, for context, bond yields usually move in tiny increments, so this is a significant leap.
And yield is essentially the return an investor gets, right? Why is a higher return causing worry?
Exactly. Higher yield means the price of existing bonds is falling the sell-off part. What's particularly concerning, as noted by the asterisk lol's son, is that this happened even as the stock market was also shaky. Usually, stock market trouble sends investors running to bonds, pushing bond prices up and yields down. This break from the historical pattern is what has experts on edge. It suggests something more fundamental might be shifting.
A break from the norm indeed. So, what are analysts saying is behind this bond market bombshell?
It seems to be a cocktail of factors, Grace. One major ingredient, highlighted by bar chart and the Lowell Sun, is a worse-than-expected report on U.S. consumer sentiment. Crucially, that report showed people expect significantly higher inflation ahead. When investors anticipate higher inflation, they demand higher yields on bonds to protect their purchasing power, which can trigger selling of older bonds with lower yields.
So inflation fears are playing a big role. But the phrase fading confidence keeps popping up in reports. Is there more to it?
Absolutely. Several sources, including bar chart and the Lowell Sun, explicitly link this sell-off to worries that the U.S. is becoming less stable or reliable in the eyes of global investors. Policy uncertainty is a key theme here. Analyses noted via Perplexity API and reporting in the asterisk Lowell Sun point towards concerns around President Trump's trade policies, tariff threats, and what some perceive as unpredictable policy moves, potentially eroding that, quote, safe haven status. Some reports even mention foreign investors, possibly China, selling treasuries, though the Lowell Sun suggested that might not be the primary driver.
Interesting. Are there also technical reasons, maybe big players making moves?
That's definitely part of the picture. The Lowell Sun and Perplexity API analyses suggest forced selling or deleveraging by large players like hedge funds could be amplifying the sell-off. These institutions might be under pressure, perhaps needing cash due to stock market losses or other strategies not panning out. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, according to the Lowell Sun, actually attributed the situation mainly to this kind of deleveraging by professional investors, perhaps trying to downplay broader confidence issues.
Okay, so yields are up due to inflation fears, confidence worries, and maybe some forced selling. What does this mean for the average American? Does this bond market shakes cons up?
It certainly can, Grace. As the asterisk Lowell Sun reported, higher Treasury yields ripple through the entire economy, pushing up borrowing costs. We could see higher interest rates on mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. For businesses, higher borrowing costs might mean higher prices for consumers or even cost-cutting measures like layoffs. Perplexity API analysis does note a small silver lining: higher yields mean better returns for savers invested in certain products. But experts warn that if these high yields persist, it could strain banks holding lots of older, lower-yield debt.
It really puts into perspective how interconnected this all is. The Lowell Sun mentioned this is quite different from past crises, like 2009.
Precisely. Back then, investors rushed into U.S. Treasuries, which helped lower borrowing costs during a critical time. The fact that this isn't happening now underscores the current unease. It reminds you of that famous James Carville quote about the power of the bond market. It really can dictate terms, sometimes even more than elections, as we saw with Liz Truss in the UK, an event also referenced by the Lowell Sun.
So looking ahead, Ethan, is the U.S. losing its quote safe status? Or is this a temporary storm?
Well, there's debate. Some experts, cited by the Lowell Sun, argue the U.S. Treasury market is so deep and liquid there aren't many realistic alternatives for parking huge sums of money. However, as of today, April 12th, the market is still quite volatile, and yields remain elevated per Perplexity API data. Analysts are cautious. Without a shift in sentiment, more policy stability, or easing trade tensions, the negative effects could linger or worsen. ETA is still unclear if this is mostly about inflation, market mechanics, or a deeper erosion of confidence.
A complex situation with real-world consequences. Ethan, thank you for breaking that down for us.
My pleasure, Grace.
We're turning now to a concerning public health story developing across the United States, a significant surge in measles cases. For more on this, we're joined by news reporter Chloe. Chloe, just how widespread is this measles resurgence?
Grace, it's quite alarming. According to reports from the Press Democrat, the Baltimore Sun, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution citing the Associated Press, the total number of U.S. measles cases this year has already shot past 700. To put that in perspective, that's more than double the 285 cases recorded for the entirety of 2024, as highlighted by data synthesized by Perplexity API. It seems we're really breaking out in a rash of cases this year.
Doubled already, and it's only April. Where are these cases concentrated? Are there specific hotspots?
Yes, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, defines an outbreak as 3 or more related cases. Based on that definition, the Press Democrat, Baltimore Sun, and AJC confirm active outbreaks in 6 states right now: Texas, New Mexico, Indiana, Kansas, Ohio, and Oklahoma. The Baltimore Sun notes Indiana was the latest state added to that list, and the CDC has actually identified 7 distinct outbreak clusters so far in 2025.
6 states with active outbreaks. Is there one area bearing the brunt of this?
Absolutely. Texas is undeniably the epicenter. The Press Democrat, the Baltimore Sun, and the AJC report a staggering 541 cases there as of yesterday or today. The outbreak reportedly began in late January and is heavily concentrated in West Texas, specifically within an unvaccinated Mennonite community in Gaines County. Tragically, the Press Democrat, Baltimore Sun, and AJC also report this Texas outbreak has led to the deaths of 2 unvaccinated elementary school-aged children. The situation is serious enough that the CDC has redeployed a response team to West Texas.
That's heartbreaking news. And are the cases in other states connected to this Texas outbreak?
Largely, yes. The AJC, citing the AP and Perplexity API, provide details New Mexico has 58 cases, all in counties bordering Texas. And sadly, the Press Democrat and others report an unvaccinated adult died there from measles complications. Kansas has 32 cases linked to the Texas and New Mexico situations, according to the Baltimore Sun and AJC. Ohio has 20 cases, Oklahoma 12, and Indiana has 6 cases, though interestingly, the Indiana cases currently have no known epidemiological link A, meaning a traceable connection A to the other outbreaks.
So what's driving this surge? Is it simply lack of vaccination?
That appears to be the primary factor, Grace. Data synthesized by Perplexity API shows about 97% of the people infected are either unvaccinated or their status is unknown. Health officials consistently emphasize, as reported by the Press Democrat, Baltimore Sun, and AJC, that measles is incredibly contagious. A. It spreads through the air, but it's preventable with the safe MMR vaccine. The Press Democrat reminds us, symptoms typically start like a cold, a fever, runny nose, cough, red eyes, then the telltale rash appears. Serious complications can include pneumonia, brain swelling, and even death. Although measles was declared eliminated in the U.S. back in 2000, meaning no continuous spread, outbreaks happen when unvaccinated travelers bring it back, especially into communities with low vaccination rates, which lowers what's called herd immunity, the protection you get when enough people are vaccinated.
You mentioned the concentration in a Mennonite community in Texas. Is there more insight into the vaccine hesitancy there?
Perplexity API synthesized reporting on this specific community in Gaines County. It seems it's complex, going beyond just general anti-vaccine views. Factors include cultural traditions of underutilizing healthcare, a strong emphasis on family autonomy and historical distrust of government mandates, limited access to healthcare and reliable information in rural settings, and the spread of specific misinformation. It's generally reported not to be based on explicit religious doctrine against vaccines, but more a mix of culture, autonomy, access issues, and misinformation.
How are health officials responding, particularly in Texas, given those cultural factors?
The CDC is back on the ground there, as we mentioned. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., according to the Baltimore Sun, expressed ongoing concern despite potential plateauing nationally. Crucially, as synthesized by Perplexity API, officials are using culturally specific strategies in Gaines County, working with trusted community members, ensuring cultural sensitivity, collaborating with local doctors, providing materials in Spanish and German where needed, and doing focused outreach. But overcoming deeply rooted hesitancy remains a challenge. Systemic issues like Texas's vaccine exemption policies and limitations in tracking vaccinations through its opt-in registry, MTRAC2, are also seen as contributing factors, though the primary focus remains on the hesitancy itself.
A complex situation with tragic consequences. Chloe, thank you for breaking down those details for us.
You're welcome, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In Central Europe, an outbreak of foot and mouth disease is causing significant disruption. First detected in Hungary near the Slovakian and Austrian borders, the first time in over 50 years for Hungary and Slovakia, the disease quickly spread to farms in neighboring Slovakia. Affecting cattle, pigs, goats, and sheep, the outbreak has led to the culling of thousands of animals, including nearly 3,000 cattle in one Hungarian town alone, with carcasses buried near the Austrian border, sparking environmental concerns. Austria has closed 23 border crossings with Hungary and Slovakia, while Slovakia has shut 16 crossings with Hungary and 1 with Austria. Disinfection measures are in place at some remaining crossings. Hungarian officials have speculated the virus might be artificial, possibly a biological attack, though no evidence supports this. The Hungarian government has promised financial aid to affected farmers, as the EU helps coordinate the response. Turning to Washington, a dispute over proxy voting for new parents has disrupted the U.S. House. Representatives Anna Paulina Luna and Brittany Pedersen proposed allowing lawmakers who are new parents to vote by proxy for 12 weeks. Using a rare discharge petition, they gathered enough signatures, including from a dozen Republicans, to force a vote. House leadership attempted to block the measure procedurally, but 9 Republicans joined Democrats to defeat that effort, halting legislative business. Speaker Mike Johnson opposes the plan, calling it unconstitutional. Representative Luna, motivated by her own difficult experience after childbirth, resigned from the Freedom Caucus, citing opposition to her proposal. Across the Atlantic, the UK Parliament held a rare emergency Saturday session, the first since the Falklands War, to address the crisis at British Steel. The company's Chinese owner, Jinji Group, plans to cease operations at the Scunthorpe plant, the UK's last facility producing steel from raw materials, deeming it financially unsustainable. Emergency legislation was passed, granting the government powers to intervene, ensuring wages are paid and raw materials secured to keep the plant running temporarily. The potential loss of primary steel production capacity is seen as a major blow to national security and industries like defense and construction. Long-term solutions, including potential nationalization, are still under discussion. In Malaysia, furniture exporters in the hub city of Muar are racing against the clock, following former President Trump's proposal for a 10% tariff on imports for a 90-day period. Manufacturers are working overtime to ship as many orders as possible to the USA, their largest market, before the window closes or tariffs potentially increase further. There are concerns U.S. distributors could abandon Malaysian suppliers if costs rise significantly, while relocating production to the U.S. is considered prohibitively expensive. Ultimately, any sustained tariffs are expected to be passed on to American consumers. And finally, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is focusing on chronic diseases plaguing Native American and Alaska Native communities, which suffer disproportionately from conditions like diabetes. However, a key CDC initiative, the Healthy Tribes Program, which utilized traditional medicine and foods and received over $32 million annually, has been severely cut amid recent federal health layoffs. Tribal leaders call this a breach of the government's trust responsibilities and report difficulty contacting program administrators. While community programs have shown success integrating traditional practices, their future is now uncertain. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Pro 2.5 Experimental, Gemini Flash 2.0, Perplexity Sonar, Perplexity Sonar Pro, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.